Welcome to Celebrating Families Week 2024. This is our last video this week. So if you have been with us, we have been releasing a film every day, a short video every day this week, just to connect with you throughout this week that we commit to at McIntyre. And my name's Nicola Payne and I'm with the wonderful Debs. Welcome, Debs.
Thank you for having me.
And we're on our last message, really, the last film, and we're, around supported living. So at McIntyre, we know it's so important to support a person where it makes sense to them to have their own tenancy and live an independent life with support. And that support will look different for every person. But it's around really celebrating that living. I can do this. I can have my own rent and have my own front door, and we hear that so commonly at McIntyre that's so important, understandably, for so many people. We know that can be tricky for families to sort of step back. And Debs and I, we're going to have a bit of a conversation today around what that reality is like. And I know you're not there yet. You've got your three grown-up children, but still living at home. But we hear it, don't we, throughout sort of networks at McIntyre, of that letting go, that sitting back and going, I'm redundant now. I don't have a purpose. And absolutely you do. And we just want to get that message out there today.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I mean, all mine is still at home. And if it was up to me, they'll live here forever and do what I tell them to do forever. But that's not going to happen. That's the reality. It can be challenging. And I think one of the biggest issues is because you know so much about them. And it's how do you share every single little thing you know about them, so to whoever's looking after them and supporting them. And that's a real challenge. And I think it's okay to feel like that, because that's human. And but one of the things I know that I've worked on with you at McIntyre is the preparing to support packs. And that came about because I was already offering something called When I'm Gone. But actually, preparing to support is different. It's not about when I'm gone. And it's about doing everything you can and sharing as much knowledge as you can, but in a way that makes sense. Because as a mum or a dad, you will have so much information and a lot of it will be in your head. And when you think about, how do I tell them all of this? You don't even know where to begin. So we broke it down, and people can sign up. It's all free. People sign up and they get a weekly email with prompts and questions around a certain subject. So it starts off with very easy things like jargon and acronyms, because this is also really useful, thinking about passing this information on to your other children or people who may be involved in their support when they're, when you're no longer able to. So it starts off with things like jargon, acronyms, because we get so used to it, and suddenly it's like, oh, hang on, I've got to, So you start off with that, and then you do things like knowing your loved one, which takes us back to day one, and what's important to them. What does that perfect day look like? Where will they go? Who will they see? What will they do? What will be with them? What will they eat? What will they drink? How will they get there? All of those things that are, their favorite things. And then we talk about like the aspirations. What do they want to do in the future? What does that look like? What do you want for them in the future? And then we start going into the nitty-gritty of the medical details. So that's like medical history, medical diagnosis. Have they got a diagnosis? When did they get it? What did that feel like? Who's involved? Who are the people who are currently involved? And who are the people who have been involved? Because anyone who's taking over that support won't know all of that. And they may have a list of who's involved currently, but they may not know the people who've been involved in the past. And there's nothing worse than, as a mum, where I know we've had it happen to us where they'll go, oh, actually, what we're going to do is refer you to such and such body. And they all think they've got the answer. And you're going, actually, no, we've been there. That didn't work. It's not on the list because they're not currently involved. But yeah, we've tried that. And then looking at sort of like, the finances. Do they have a bank account? Who has, the legal, oh, I've lost the brain.
No, but you're so right in sharing that. And you know what's just coming to my mind is, do you remember we had a sibling event a couple of years ago, and we met a sister of someone that draws on McIntyre support, and she said to us, if I was to have my brother or sister overnight, I wouldn't know this kind of information that you're talking about now. I wouldn't know where their bedtime routine, what that looks like, what's important throughout those steps and things. And we heard other families starting to sort of talk about the worry about not passing over this rich information, and along came preparing to support. And I just, you're walking us through it brilliantly, but it's so important that history, isn't it, of it, why it's come about. And it is absolutely paramount for siblings to learn more about their brother and sister, because that connection that's going to look different for every family, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's about sharing the information, the practical information. So if they're in supported living, who's the landlord? Who's responsible for anything that it breaks? Who's responsible for this, and this? Is the insurance? Who's the insurance? How's it insured? Who pays for it? All of those things are practical things, but it's the other stuff as well that, where else have you looked? Why didn't that work? Where else have you been? And what's working really well? So again, going back to the person-centered stuff about what's working, what's not working. And so what we tried to do with preparing to support is we've mixed each week up. So every week, when you get something, if it's a really in-depth one, so like the medical details, and for some we know that will be a really long, extensive, like lots of questions to answer, but for others it won't be so full on. So the next one is something like allies and barriers. So it's like, out of the people who are involved, who are the people of the allies? Who are the people who will go that extra mile? Who are the people who will make sure, who really care about your loved one? And who are the people who very often are a barrier, because they exist, that, we're being honest. And then we do financial matters, and then we do essential passwords. And that can be, it's not just the passwords, but it's things like, what's the email address they use for their tablet? If they're using an iPad or a tablet of any description, very often that's like such a lifeline for them. But if you don't know the account name it's signed up for and the password, if anything goes wrong, you can't transfer it. So, and it's like, is there a pin to get in it? Is there like a lock key? What's that lock key? So it's those type of things as well, because I think when we think about passwords, we think about like banks, and we think about, we forget some of the like the daily stuff that they use that they need to sign into. And then it's looking at, the wills and trusts and legalities and that type of thing. And then it's looking at what equipment do they have. And very often the equipment we have has become so part of our life, we forget it's not the norm. So it's like, where did that come from? Who's responsible for it if it needs reviewing? And so, yeah, but like you said, the whole evening, the staying over, the bedtime routines, because I know we've got a mum that we talk to regularly, and her daughter needs to ring her every night before she goes to bed. That's part of her routine, and it's really important to her. So it's like, okay, who's going to do that? And if I'm not around, if it could be I'm ill, or I'm on holiday even, or I'm somewhere and suddenly the internet connection is really poor, who else is available and who's going to make that call, and how's that going to look? So we break it down. I think it's about 15, 16 weeks of it. It's not a quick thing, but it breaks it down into a way that makes it understandable. It makes it like bite size, so you're not overwhelmed at trying to remember everything. And what we say to people is, like, open up a Word document, just save it, and then email that to people. Email it to yourself, and then that way you've always got a copy that's available. And there's so many things with the supported living, because it is that stepping back. But if you've done the preparing to support, you're stepping back with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more, it's going to be all right. And and things will go wrong, because they go wrong when you are around. That's real life. But if there's stuff in place where that knowledge has been shared, it's less likely to be, so it could be like, say for example, the support team's in and suddenly there's a problem with the iPad, they can go find that. And they go, actually, it's all right, we've got this, we know how to get in, and or we know who has that information. So yeah, it's those things that we do automatically, I think, as parents, and we store in our head. But also just imagine as a parent that you have suddenly written all that information down. So 16 weeks down the line, you have written it all down, and it could be in a beautiful folder, or it might just be on a Word document where you've done it, or a Google Docs. And the freedom in your brain, well, suddenly, I know when I did it and everything was written down, it was like the biggest weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And yeah, because it's on a document, I can just keep going back in. Oh, do you know what I forgot to add?
Yeah.
And just go keep adding. Doing it as a Google Docs is a really good thing, because then you're sharing the link and it's a live document that you can keep updating as and when you need to.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the big things for supported living, is sharing the information so that you feel confident.
Definitely. And gathering it, Debs, before there's a crisis, before doing it in a more leisurely way, where you've not got that pressure. Sometimes you might find yourself doing that because of circumstantial changes and things, but doing it when you think, actually, everything's ticking over really well here. This is on my mind. It's been on my mind, but I push it to the back sometimes because that's all I do. This could help, like you say, take that load off, just to go, actually, there you go. And then, yeah, I think it's so important.
We all absolutely know we need to do, but it was the knowing where to start. Yeah. And it's, like we said, it's 60, I think it's about 60, it's either 16 or 17 weeks, can't remember now, but it's one of those where it's like, there's so much to do, and where do you start? And so what we've done is broke it down for you. And so we've covered things like direct payments. Do they get direct payments? Where's it paid in? What do they get for it? What can it be used for? What can't it be used for? How do you work out mileage? And if you're doing mileage, who pays for the mileage? And it's all of those extras. So that hopefully, even though you may not physically still be involved in everything day to day, you're still there, because that big document has all the information, starting with their aspirations and starting with what people like about them and what people, so it's putting it in a way that you're still there. You've still got all that information, but in a way that people can get the bits they need out of it easily when they need it.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant explanation, Debs. And this is available via our website. So if you go on to McIntyre's website, you'll see there's a little button that says Our Approach. Click on that. It takes you to families. Click on that, and then everything that we talk about preparing to support sits on there, and you can sign up. And we really hope that you do. And if you do, feedback to myself and Debs on how that's gone as well, because we really want to gather some examples of where it has felt good and it's doing what it's set out to do, but also it's very new, and Debs and I are really honest with that. We might have absolutely missed something vital out. We hope we haven't, but you might go, this element that could be added, and we will absolutely do that as well. It's sort of work in progress at the moment as well, with a real yeah.
It was something that we created. It was myself, and we had two other families from McIntyre involved in helping us. So they were people as well that were coming up with stuff that, I don't have a child in supported living, so they can come up with things that I hadn't even considered. But it's really nice for me, because I'm suddenly sat there going, oh, I know what to include in this one, because I hadn't even known that was an issue. So yeah, it's been a really useful tool. And the feedback on it, but again, if we have missed something, because it was like we'd done it all, and it was like, oh yeah, direct payments, missed a whole week out there, and added those in. So it's about making sure that we covered everything we could.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Thank you, Debs. And I just want to just throw in right at the end of this, our focus absolutely is around preparing to support, but again, linking right back to the beginning of we want to make sure you do feel valued and part of your loved one's life where that's the case. And I just wanted to touch upon, let's get to the family charter, Debs.
Yeah.
I sit here hoping that everyone's got a fabulous relationship with the staff teams that support your loved one, and that we really hope that is the case. But the family charter is a document that was created by families. It sits on our website, and it just allows you to think through: are you involved? Are you being valued, respected? Are we being honest with you? And vice versa as well, for staff to use that as a reflective tool when working with families and circles of support. The family charter itself is probably another conversation we could have at another time, but there's some quite nice information on our website about that. And if you're not familiar with it, I would really recommend you go on and just take a look at it and feel confident enough to sort of print it off or have a conversation with your teams at McIntyre or who you're connected with about it if you haven't, because it's a really cathartic, useful resource to reflect and use throughout the year.
Yeah, no, definitely. The family charter is brilliant, and it's simple.
Mm.
It's not about asking anybody to do anything that is anything but actually just common courtesy.
Yeah.
So
I always say, so everything on there is how you would want to be treated as a person
yeah,
and as human beings. And we have these conversations quite a lot, Debs. We get things wrong, and it's just owning that, isn't it? Sometimes, and going, actually, we haven't been as honest as we could have been, or we haven't acknowledged the mistake that we've made. And then when these kind of things don't get spoken about, it can just mount up into this feeling of a real negative, and then barriers come up, and we know that can happen. And we know with conversations around the charter and having that sort of that in your mind, it helps keep relationships where they should be, and we all want them to be in a good place. So wonderful stuff.
no, brilliant. And I think, there's an awful lot of stuff on McIntyre's website, like resources and useful tools that if you don't know about them, then you can find them easily and get an awful lot of support and help.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Debs. And that is our last film for the week. I really hope if you have indulged in everyone, then brilliant. Thank you for staying with us. But if not, then do familiarize yourself with them if you'd like. And we hope you found them useful. We've said in each film they're just a short snippet of something we feel that could help within that timeline of where you might be, dependent on where your loved one is supported, be it a child at the school or a grown-up child. As Deb says, they're always our children, whatever age they are, but a grown-up person at one of our care homes or supported living within McIntyre. So thank you for being part of this week with us. Thank you, Debs, for your time today, but your ongoing support at McIntyre. It's so valued, and I really appreciate you. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. No, thank you for having me. I do enjoy it. Been doing it for a long time now, and it's always, I think that the difference for me is I always feel like as a parent, when I make a suggestion, it gets acted on. And that's a big difference. I think McIntyre is very good at that.
Lovely. Thank you, Debs. And like on all films, I have left my email address. It's nicola.payne@mcintyrecharity.org. Any questions you've got, any ideas as well. Debs and I are always wanting ideas of how we can connect further with you as well. We do try different ways. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But we would love to start hearing more from you. So always don't hesitate to get in touch. So thank you very much. And we look forward to marking Celebrating Families Week 2025 next year. Take care. Thanks, Debs.